We are.
All right. Good morning. As chair of the House Legislative Administration Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public hearing on bills referred to the committee and scheduled in the House calendar for today. An executive session may be held on any bill referred to the committee. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call area code 603-271-3600 or email hcs@leg.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required by right to know law. With that, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll.
Representative Espedia.
Here, and there is no one in the room except for me and my dog.
Representative Frost.
I am present and moving to a private location in my home.
Representative Green.
I'm here in my home in Hudson, and my wife will be in and out.
Representative Hill.
Here in the Legislative Administration sumptuous room.
Representative Lay.
I am present. I am home in Jaffrey, and I am alone.
Representative McKinney.
Here, alone in Londonderry.
Representative Nutting Wong.
I'm here. I'm alone in my office, though it might not sound like it.
Representative Osborne. Representative Packard.
No.
Representative Richards.
I am here. I am currently alone in my office. There may be a person passing through from my staff. Very rarely, though.
Representative Roulard.
I'm here in my home alone in the room. However, my husband may be running through every now and again.
And the clerk is here alone in my home office. Representative Simon.
Here alone in my office at home in Littleton.
Representative Smith. And Representative Wall.
Not that I see. Actually, the picture of the committee room looks a little strange because it looks like I'm hiding behind the monitor. It doesn't look like anyone's in the Legislative Administration meeting room. For some reason, they gave us the largest room, House Finance. So it's for one person, it feels a little silly sitting in here, but I have to admit. The time being 9:05, and in the calendar at 9 o'clock, we have hearing for House Bill 186. I will open the hearing on House Bill 186. This is an act repealing certain inactive committees and revising the membership or duties of certain committees, councils, and boards. With that, the chair, there are 4 people signed up to speak currently. The chair will call the prime sponsor, Representative Karen Ebel. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Karen Ebel, and I represent Merrimack District 5. And it's my pleasure to present to you this morning HB 186, which is a bill to repeal inactive committees and revising the membership and duties of certain other committees. And I urge you to pass it after you review it and make your own comments. I want to say that this bill is the culmination of over 2 years of work by 2 committees on committees and House Committee Services researcher Pam Smarling. When I was first appointed as Deputy Speaker a couple of years ago, I one day offered to help with appointments to these statutory commissions, and it started a very long journey. I was very surprised to see that what was required was almost 300 appointments to over 200 statutory committees. It's a staggering task for any incoming speaker. And after some discussion working with House Committee Services, we decided to make a comprehensive list of these committees. We looked at their, to assemble the frequency of meetings and their responsibilities and that sort of thing. It took Pam months and months of work to assemble a very complete chart of all of these. I introduced a bill to form a committee on committees. And the governor, in the meantime, great minds think alike, he introduced, he added into the budget, HB 4 at the time, a committee on committees was established to look at all the existing statutory committees and also all committees that were created by executive order. Because the budget wasn't signed into law until October 2019, and we had to report by February 1st. We had a very compressed time schedule, but we did an awful lot, and most of it was because Pam had done as much work as she had. My original bill, HB 1245, put into place the recommendations of that original committee of committees and created a new one so we could finish our work. That was signed into law. We met for several months, completed our work, and HB 186 is the result of the bipartisan report of that committee on committees. It too repeals and makes adjustments to several statutory committees. On the committee, I chaired both of them, was Representative Mary Heath, Dave Danielson, Sharon Carson, and Cindy Rosenwald. Our charge, we felt, was to simply review and make no substantive changes to the responsibilities of the committees. And we tried to tweak where necessary to make them more relevant. And if they hadn't been meeting for a really long time, to talk about repealing them. I think it's important that the committee understand the review. Every administrative agency came in to discuss the statutory committees and commissions that were associated with their agencies, and we discussed their history, their frequency of meeting, purpose, and their need for continued existence. Members of the committee, our committee on committees, also conferred with commission and committee chairs to get their input. And the recommendations are the culmination of a great deal of discussion and review. And we strictly adhered to our charge of being administrative and not substantive in our review. Members of the committee may recall that in 2010, Former Representative Neil Kirk and Lori Harding pursued a similar course. It had been a decade since the statutory commissions had been reviewed, and it was time to renew them again because they do proliferate rapidly. The HB4 Committee on Committee report made a number of recommendations to try to tackle these changes and to make the work of these committees more meaningful. That's also attached to the report of this committee. I just want to say among the most important recommendations we made was for HCS to constantly keep updated the list of committees and to include by rule the responsibilities of this committee, which you may not like, to do a periodic review of the outstanding committees. A decade is just too long, and it shouldn't require almost 2 years of work to do this every 10 years. And it just would be a lot better if we could keep things updated. In my testimony, I included the recommendations of the report. I was going to include those in my testimony today, but it's right there. A lot of it has to do with just making sure that the standing committees are aware of the statutory committees that work on topics that are relevant to their committee. And we want to make sure that the standing committees get the reports that these statutory committees do, because many times they just go to the Speaker's office and the Senate President and the clerk, and they never get to where they need to go. So I'll wrap it up there as far as my testimony is concerned. And I'm happy to take questions of the committee. Just because I heard the comments in the beginning of the meeting, I just wanted to say, as far as the Youth Advisory Council, the only change we made there was to, instead of just having membership be post-secondary students, we expanded that category to high school and post-secondary because there was a lot of difficulty based on the testimony we took in getting post-secondary students. So that was the only thing that was done there. And as far as Fish and Game, my recollection of the testimony, and this is going back a while, was that there was some difficulty in getting people just from the seacoast, if I remember right, and also a sense from the testimony that we got that marine resources was more than just a seacoast issue. But other than that, I'm happy to take your questions. I just want to assure the committee that this was done in a very comprehensive way. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Pam Smarling, because if it wasn't for her backup for this, we never could have accomplished it. So with that, I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll second the notion that Pam Smarling is a star among stars here for all of us. You said you will take questions. I will look to the committee to raise their hand or signal somehow if they have questions for Representative Ebel. Seeing none, I will ask, one is, would you be willing to stick around for a minute while we talk with the other agencies that are asking questions of us? It may be best if you're available. Are you available for a few minutes?
Sure, I'm happy to stay.
Okay. I also, could you also just run through again for me the process that you went through? Did you, was it looking first for low-hanging fruit? Were you looking for committees that hadn't met for a certain period of time, and that was an indicator, or where did you go from there?
Well, basically what Pam did over months and months of work is she compiled this huge chart, which is attached to the report, and she identified the committee, the statute, She tried to track through where they were listed on a website. Some of them, I mean, that's among the recommendations of our committee. You couldn't even find them. Then she tried to find the history of when they had met last. And if she couldn't find it on the website, she reached out to administrative agencies. And we could see from the chart that she put together that there were a lot of committees that hadn't met in a really long time. So we tried to be thoughtful about how we would approach it. And so what Pam did is she basically figured out every statutory committee's link up to an administrative agency. And she reached out to the agency. She told them, this is the list of committees that we've identified that you're administratively attached to. And we brought the administrative committee in. So while we were driven in part to try to get rid of the low-hanging fruit, we didn't think that was the best way of approaching it, just because we weren't totally sure of who was meeting when based on the information we had. And we just started with the administrative agencies, and they did a phenomenal job of summarizing the work that they do with the different agencies. So what you're seeing here is the second committee on committees. The first one, I think we reviewed over 200 organizations. So it wasn't just whether they meet or not. Like, for instance, I think it was something like county finance. They hadn't met in a really, really long time, but the agency came in and said, no, they're really important. When we need them, we need them. So that's the other thing, to just leave some of them in place in case you need them. Just to keep going, like, the bill isn't just a couple of pages, because whenever you repeal a committee, you have to go through all the statutes and see where the committee is referenced. So you have to delete the cross references. And then the other thing that we tried to do, some of these committees, they could have 15 people on them, and it just wasn't necessary. And in an effort to reduce the legislative burden, in some cases, like if they called for 5 House reps, we made it 3, things like that.
Thank you. What we have in front of us, this bill came before, for the people that don't realize this came before legislative administration last year. I think it got bogged down in the Senate. Is that right?
Well, what happened was, so HB 4 created a committee on committees, and then HB 1245 contained the recommendations of the HB 4 committee, and also created a second committee on committees so we could finish our work. And so HB 1245 was the lead bill on an omnibus that was put together. And so the governor signed into law that omnibus. And since that created a committee on committees, then I chaired the next one. And so we did some more work, finishing up our work, and that's what HB 186 is. So new bill.
Is 186 the updated version since the last time legislative administration saw this, or no?
It's a different bill. Basically, what it does is it embodies the second part of the work that we had to do. I mean, without getting, I won't talk about the bill numbers. Basically, we had a committee on committees. We had a report date. We couldn't finish all our work in the first part of it, so we introduced another bill. And we finished up in the next round. So what you see here is a new bill that I just introduced based on the second half of the Committee on Committees work. And so it's a whole different set of committees being repealed, et cetera.
I see Representative Lay with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking the question. So clarify for me, Representative Evil, I'm a little lost on this. So we did consider last year, I believe, a bill introduced by you to Leg Admin, which streamlined, eliminated certain committees or abolished them, things like that. Okay. What happened to that bill?
It was signed into law.
Okay, so follow
Those
up?
are done.
Okay, so follow up, Mr. Chair, I just want to be sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
keep
so
going.
then this bill is simply a continuation, but it is not repetitive. This is all new. We have not seen this before. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that was my confusion as well. That's, there was one other question I had in there for you, and now I've lost it. But I'm sure it'll come back. Thank you very much for your testimony. If you'll hang on for a moment, we may have other questions for you as we go. Representative Green, could you pull up Representative Porter, please? And promote her.
I am not seeing her at the moment. Should we move on to the next person?
Sure, sure.
Excuse me, I got a text from her. She said she's hung up in the other meeting and she won't be able to attend, but I kind of explained what was going on in this bill as far as LIAC is concerned.
Okay. She was signed up in support, so I'm sure whatever she had to add, you've already given us. Is that?
Yeah, as I say, her only concern on LIAC was just that they were having a hard time attracting post-secondary students. And since that requirement was in there, she just asked if it was added to high school, because she just didn't, she thought it would be unfortunate if a seat was not filled because it was required to be filled by post-secondary.
I thought of my other question. When you spoke to agencies, did you go deep into the details of specifically in this fish and game question we have? Would it be normal practice for you to have gone as deeply into where membership should come from? Would that be a normal practice?
I think I don't recall the precise conversation with them. I guess I have to go back to the process that we did, and we tried really hard not to make changes that were really dramatically altering. My recollection again is that I wouldn't have made that change if we hadn't, or the whole committee wouldn't have recommended that change if we hadn't discussed it with Fish and Game and felt like there was consensus there. Again, the only reason that might have been changed is because there was some sense that they were having trouble filling it in with people. That one I don't know. And again, I just want to say it was never the intent of this committee to make substantive changes that would alter things, substantively. We had several people, I will say, agencies come in and say, this really needs to be revamped. This isn't working. And we would say to them, that's not our charge. You need to go back and introduce a new bill to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. We were kind of a cleanup crew. I mean, that's the way I viewed it. So if it's perceived by Fish and Game that we did something substantive that they disagree with, I'm not going to stand here and say that they shouldn't do it. I would just say that our process was such that that's what we thought the consensus view was.
Did the Committee on Committees make any recommendation as to how often this should be done if it's not every 10 years?
The thing is that these things proliferate like crazy. And my thought, the committee's thought, was that the Ledge Admin Committee, at least every 5 years, could create an ad hoc committee of some sort and just start to review these things. So this was a sort of a routine thing that the committee did. 10 years is really, really too long. And this was, you can see it was a 2-year process. And it's hard for me to figure a way that it would be quicker than the time that it took. I had hoped this time around that we might be able to get a rule to amend the responsibilities of the Legislative Administration Committee to include a review, but that wasn't approved by the Rules Committee. And I think in part because I wasn't there to sort of present it, that it was the recommendation of this committee and all the reasons why we thought that was a good thing to do. I mean, you guys can do it whether it's in the rule or not, but it needs to be done more than every 10 years. You know, it's sort of like it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and then somebody goes, this really needs to be reviewed, and then somebody introduces a bill. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a routine procedure. And you know, I know we're talking about the specific bill, but I really hope when you guys have a little breathing room, you can look at the report and the recommendations, because there's stuff there like how OLS should interact with the members, you know, make sure anyway.
Well, we won't be execing it today. So it is something that the committee has the ability to take a look at. Any idea, you went from the 300 appointees that had to be made to various committees. Do you know what the number dropped to after?
I didn't go back and count.
Okay.
You know,
No.
I will say for all the effort, I kind of wish we were able to cut out more, but you know, people came in and said they were useful. I think in the end, I don't know, Pam might know better than me. Maybe we repealed about 40, but we reduced the membership of a lot. Let's say 50 to 60.
Okay. Yep. It's a number. Thank you very much again. Are we set now to bring in the insurance department? Bob? You're muted, Bob.
Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Tyler Brennan.
Mr. Brennan.
Hi, thank you. So Tyler Brennan with the Insurance Department. And
welcome. Welcome. You're willing to you're muted again, I see.
Thank you. I thought I'd lost you there for a moment. So this is, we are in support of the bill. It's not something we requested, but this committee that it repeals, the Insurance Oversight Committee, the Joint Healthcare Committee, is a perfect example, I think, of the kind of committee that was considered obsolete. This committee was created 10 years ago, really when the ACA, a federal law, was being rolled out. And at this point, it's completed its mandate. It really was involved in some of the state-based decisions we would have to make, although most of those decisions were, are we actually going to do this at the state level and not have the federal government take it over for us? So they were pretty easy decisions. The technical amendment that we did suggest support for really just is to make sure that other references within the same chapter to the Oversight Committee are also taken out, but we do see those changes as purely technical. Because this committee is obsolete, it doesn't mean some of the discussions that would be big policy decisions at the state level, the kind of decisions that wouldn't need legislation. And of course, you know, a lot of important decisions will end up in legislation, is a commission that's called the Commission on the Status of Health Coverage Markets for Individual and Small Employers. And this is a great group because it includes legislators, it includes folks from the carriers, insurance brokers, employer representatives, and that's where a good, fruitful discussion can take place of any policy decisions that the state might move forward with instead of this other joint healthcare committee that would be now removed. So not much more to add to that. So we support the bill in this particular section. I am referring to lines 7 through 9 on page 1 if you have any questions, but it's a relatively small part of the overall bill. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from committee members? As I understand it, you just want to make sure as a technical housekeeping item that all references are removed when that committee or commission is removed.
Yeah, so the bill essentially removes the main paragraph that the committee is described, but there are a couple of other parts of the chapter that refer back to that. So, and it's real nice because you can just take it out of the portion of the sentence without changing the rest of the chapter. So it's they should be easy fixes.
Okay. Seeing no questions, I will thank you for taking the time and coming to speak with us.
Thank you.
Representative Green, can we pull up?
We just pulled up Paul Sanderson.
Mr. Sanderson, welcome to Legislative Administration. You're muted. I think you're muted on your end. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've been listening to your proceedings so far, and I'd like to heartily agree with Representative Ebel about the process that they followed. It was, in fact, cooperative and collaborative. And you'll note that we have actually two agencies, two of our boards in this particular bill, Section 9 and Section 10. And with respect to Section 10 to the Public Water Access Advisory Board, their suggestions are good, and we certainly support those. Number 9, the only problem that we have is the removal of the words, all of whom shall be residents of the Seacoast region. And we successfully communicated to the committee the need for this advisory board, but apparently didn't successfully communicate just how closely tied that particular advisory board is to the commercial fishing industry in the state of New Hampshire, which really is centered on the seacoast. I think the concern that the advisory board expressed when they got back to us was they didn't want a situation that could potentially happen where no members of their advisory commission were from seacoast towns or connected to the commercial fishing industry. So that's why we've raised this point. This is a very active board. In fact, they met as recently as last evening. They deal with issues that really aren't dealt with elsewhere in the state, such as working with the National Marine Fisheries Council, working with the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Commission, dealing with the Department of Commerce and NOAA on fishing and fishing enforcement. These are issues that really are located in this particular industry and located and centered in the seacoast region of the state. So we really would appreciate it if there were no change to this particular commission. And with that in mind, I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Are there any? Oh, I see one hand, Representative Lay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking the question. So, Mr. Sanderson, how do you define, or what is the definition of seacoast region?
We actually have it in part of our Fish and Game statutes. Yep. It's in RSA 206-2-A, and it deals with the appointment of a special commissioner to the Fish and Game Commission from the sea towns, and it involves 17 towns that are in the sea. I could read them for you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. As long as you have a definition, that's what I was concerned. Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So the work of this particular commission concerns obviously the commercial marine fisheries business. Is it possible that somebody could be deeply engaged in that business but live outside those 17 towns?
They may well live outside of those towns, but they certainly work in those towns. That's where the industry really is centered. We don't have any commercial fishing processors in the marine area that are outside of this particular region.
Right. So, follow up again?
Follow up.
My concern is that the language being deleted states quite explicitly they must be residents of that region. So if they live outside that region but are engaged in business in that region, as you just stated, they would be barred from membership on this commission, correct?
That is correct.
Follow up.
If the committee were to consider it an improvement that they be involved in the commercial fishing industry, regardless of where they reside, that would meet that concern.
So would you object to a change like that? Would the fishing?
I don't think that they would, because that certainly is what they're really trying to get at here, is having people who are actively in the fishing industry be the ones helping and advising our marine division.
So there could be a possibility where, rather than defining it in terms of place of residence, it could be defined in terms of engagement with particular business, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
My
I have,
hand is up.
oh,
My hand is up.
thank you. Representative Roulard.
Thank you. You know, Representative Lay and I are on the same page on this. I was concerned about somebody that had a specific expertise and perhaps had been involved with this particular fish and game group and perhaps moved outside of that area. And maybe somebody that would be able to provide expertise because maybe they were part of this particular board in the past. And the way that this is worded, all of whom shall be, and my thought was perhaps the majority of them be from that group, but not exclude people that you may feel or that this group may feel would be an absolute asset. So although I understand that residents could be changed to folks engaged, it also could be individuals that had previously been on the board. And the way that this is, it's limiting the whole enchilada as it is. And I think we probably would not want to have all of whom, but I wondered if that would be a problem at all, Mr. Sanderson.
I think that your suggestions are good ones, and that what we're trying to do is reflect the necessary expertise on the board rather than where they live.
Right.
Any sort of a change along that line would be a beneficial change.
Terrific. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, seeing no hands raised. Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. I have one quick question. Would there be any concern? It sounded to me when the prime sponsor of the bill was speaking that there may have been a question about the ability to fill the committee, that there was difficulty in getting enough people to fill it. Is that a concern or no?
That really has not been a concern.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time. Appreciate your testimony.
And thank you and members of the committee.
Seeing no other people who have signed up to speak on this, are there any, I will ask if there are any members of the public with their hands raised. Representative Green, can you see anyone?
I do not. No hands as of yet, no.
Are there people on telephone that need instructions on how to raise their hand, or is everyone on Zoom?
Everyone's on Zoom with, no telephone participants or attendees.
All right. I think with that, I'm comfortable then with closing the hearing on House Bill 186. The time being 9:39, we've passed the time in the calendar that had listed the executive session. I'm happy to now open the executive session and immediately recess the executive session to a date certain, which we believe will be March 29th. Hoping for, well, we have the request in for March 29th at 10 o'clock. My suggestion is that you keep an eye on the calendar in the House because we really don't know. There seems to be, in the list I saw, a number of committees all meeting that week. So where we meet, what time we meet, but we would be, as a committee, dealing with all of the remaining bills we have, including this one, 186, on that day. And beyond that, I have no further business up. I see a hand by Representative Lay, or?
Just a quick question, and it really just goes back to HB 186. Was the insurance department rep actually suggest he was suggesting another technical amendment to this?
Yes, Representative Lay, he had sent in.
Okay, so I haven't seen it yet. Okay.
Yeah, okay. He had sent in, I think Representative Roulard saw that, did you not? I'm trying to think of, I don't know if he just sent it to me or whether he sent it to the entire committee. I know Pam saw it, Pam Smarling, but it was the technical corrections of where that was referenced throughout the statute. So that was all that was in there. But we could I'll certainly make sure the entire committee gets it if they haven't already been sent it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from anyone else that we need to discuss? That's good. Things are smooth. All right, so the next thing you'll see, I guess, is the calendar listing when our executive session. And for some of the newer folks, because the deadline has been moved out, that gave us the ability to move this this executive session out and hopefully fit into everybody's work schedules a little bit better. Yeah, I see the thumb. And I think that's it for today. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you probably the 29th.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.